And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Steve La Russa, who died due to a heart attack and had a near-death experience. Steve, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Well, Steve, let's start on the day that you had the heart attack and go from there.
Okay, sounds good. So basically, this happened the morning of October 9th, 2024. My wife was returning. She was visiting her mother and a few friends in Sacramento, California area. So she gave me a call on the road, and I just sensed that she felt a little down. She was a little down. She was a little, something in her spirit wasn't right. So I said, look, when you get back, let's pack a overnight bag and let's head up to Lake Tahoe. Let's hit the beach. Let's rejuvenate spiritually. Let's do some earthing. Let's do some meditation. So she got back. We went up drove up to Lake Tahoe. So on our way up there was kind of funny because on the way up there, I had a strange and unusual feeling. And I wouldn't classify it as good or bad or anything like that. It was just weird. There was something weird in the air. And I didn't mention it to my wife because, we get these funny feelings and sometimes we just blow them off or, we think we're imagining something and it's not a big deal. So we get up, check in our room, and decide to go grab a bite to eat. So after we eat, we say, hey, nice clear night. Let's drive up the hill. Let's do some stargazing. So we drive up into the hills. We get a good distance up the hill, find a spot, pitch black, beautiful night. And I take the top off the car and we just sit in the car and kind of gaze up. My wife, a funny thing about it, my wife noticed a small white dot in the air, going across the air. She pointed it out to me. Now, the interesting thing about this was we were near the Reno airport. So it wasn't a plane. It wasn't a balloon. It wasn't a drone. We had seen planes in the area. This was something that was outside the Earth's atmosphere. It was up amongst the stars. It wasn't a shooting stars because shooting stars streak and you see them for a couple seconds, if that long. It was a little white dot moving across the sky. I saw it. She saw it. She pointed out. So we're in awe. Then we see another one going in another direction. We follow it for 10 or 15 seconds before it kind of disappears and gets out of eyesight. And I'm in awe. I'm like, oh my God, a UFO. I've always believed in paranormal UFOs. I've always, even before my spiritual awakening and whatnot. So we ended up seeing 5 of these anomalies in the air. And of course, my first thought is UFO. I'm amazed. I'm shocked. I'm all adrenaline going. So we waited for a while, didn't see any more. We saw about 5 or 6. We weren't really counting, but there were about 5 or 6 of them. We come back down the hill. As we're driving down the hill, I feel my left side and my arm begin to tingle and begin to numb up. Now, as I had both of my hands on the steering wheel, my left hand got locked in this C position, which is how I had my hand on the steering wheel, holding the steering wheel. I couldn't move my fingers at all. It was numbness and tingling and just stuck. So I took my hand off the steering wheel for a second, started moving my fingers, shaking my arm. It basically went away. Now, I never had a heart attack or any symptoms of a heart attack in my life. I'm 53 years old. I'd always, heard about them and read, beware of symptoms on your left side, tingling, numbness, that sort of thing. So I was a little concerned, but I didn't say anything to my wife. I didn't want to alarm her. This happened on the way up there, and it happened on the way back. Now, on the way back, the second time it happened, I did decide to mention it to her because I said, okay, this is not normal. Something's going on here, and I need you to be aware of it. Just make a note of it. I don't know. So we stopped. She wanted to get a coffee. We get back to the room. Now, when we get back to the room, this eerie, strange feeling started up again. Once again, I didn't mention it. I didn't say anything about it. We turn on the TV, we lay on the bed, we're talking. So we're just talking, watching TV. We're fully awake. We're fully awake. I want to be clear about that. The pain starts up again, the tingling and numbness. But this time it's more intense, and it's the pain. There wasn't any pain the first two times. Now there's a severe pain on my left side, going down my arm, shooting down my arm, and I could feel it on the left side of my chest. My arm begins to do a little twitching. And I think to myself, oh my God, is this a heart attack? So I looked at my wife, her name is Wanda. I said, Wanda, I think I'm dying. I think I'm dying. Now, the funny thing about this, at this point, my thinking was she was gonna call 911. You know, she was gonna start panicking, call 911, get the paramedics. She didn't do that, which was interesting. She laid on the bed and laid on my right side, and with her left arm grabbed my right arm. Now, later on, after the event, as we compared notes, she told me, because of course, we talked about it in depth, trying to make sense of it all. She said that she heard a voice telling her to lay down and get in position. And she a calm came over, and she laid down and got in position. So as I'm laying there in pain, I began to pray in my head. Now here's the important part. I was unable to talk at this point. I was in pain. I was shaking. I couldn't speak audibly. So I started praying in my head to God. Dear God, what's going on? Dear God, please don't let me die. I'm begging and pleading for my life. So at this time, my wife looks over to me and says, we're transcending. She said, I feel it also. So I said, oh my God. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're transcending. Now, my wife and I have been married for 25 years. I never heard her use that word. That's not a word in her vocabulary. She's never used that word. So I'm thinking, okay, we're dying. We're dying together. She's feeling the same symptoms I am. So I'm praying. As I'm praying, she later did tell me that I can hear all of your prayers. The funny thing about it, she heard all of my prayers telepathically. Now, we've been together 25 years. As I said, we've never spoken telepathically. We never even tried. So it the lines for us to communicate telepathically were opened. So as we're laying there and I'm begging for my life, all my pleading, I feel like it's falling on deaf ears. I'm not getting better. So this is when I hear the voice say to me, you've wasted enough time. So when I heard that, I knew exactly what that meant, because I had the voice stepping in my calling. And I started, God, I'm sorry. I know what I'm supposed to do. I apologize. Give me another chance. Just begging and pleading. Nothing worked. At this point, I'm saying I'm in complete darkness. I'm feeling my soul being pulled out of my body, being tugged, like a tugging or a pulling. I'm in darkness. I go through a stage where I'm in complete darkness. I go through a stage where I'm in outer space amongst the stars, traveling through outer space, the galaxy or whatnot. I don't know. Then I start seeing the white light. Now in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, the white light. This is the white light, because I heard many people's stories about this and never thought I'd be in this situation. So as I'm approaching it, in my head, told myself, okay, well, just give in. At least my wife and I, at least we'll die together. That was my thought, because my prayers were not working. I wasn't getting any better. I was being pulled further and further out of my body, away and into the light. As soon as I told myself, or as soon as I was just about to release totally, my wife said to me telepathically, Steven, fight, fight, fight. Don't give up, fight. When I heard this gave me a second wind. This gave me a second wind. I began praying and pleading more, even harder. I began to mention my son. I told God, please don't do this. please don't do this. My son, he needs us. He wouldn't make it without us. He needs our guidance. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm called for. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. So I'm begging and I'm pleading. And my wife, I can hear her thoughts. Steve, keep fighting, keep fighting. But at this point, I'm getting tired. I'm starting to get tired. I have no concept of time. I don't have any idea. My wife and I don't have any idea how long this went on. So at this point, my wife told me, as we talked about it later, I said, "Did you hear anything?" She said, "I only heard one thing from God." She heard a voice that said, and she said it was stern yet sarcastic, that he said, "And why should I leave you here?" That's the only thing she heard. And she said, "Jordan," which is our son. She just said one word. And she said, "That's the only thing I ever received during the event, but I did hear the voice also." So I'm about to give up. The second time I heard God's voice, he said to me, "All this information that I've given to you, and this is what you do with it." And I felt horrible. I felt, because I knew exactly what he was talking about. I knew exactly what I've been through the last 2 years. And I knew that I got to a point where I was running from a calling that he had put on me, and I was avoiding it. And I started begging God, I know my calling. I know what I'm supposed to do. Give me another chance. It can't end like this. It can't end on a hotel bed in here. It can't. Please don't. Please don't do this. So then at that point, I, I'm just guessing here. I felt like I was 95% gone, and I was getting tired. It was draining me so much. The white light constantly getting closer. And I said, I can't do anymore. And I guess it was a last ditch effort. It didn't even feel like me. But for some reason, I said, "Wanda, help me." And it's like, during the event, I called on Jesus, everything. I didn't see Jesus. It didn't help, nothing. As soon as I called and asked my wife to help me, she sat up in the bed. Now, this is the first time during the event that either one of us spoke out loud, audibly. She sits up in the bed and she starts speaking in tongues. She starts speaking and chanting in tongues. Now, I will say, in 25 years that we've been together, this is the second or third time that I've heard this. So when I heard it, it didn't surprise me because I've heard it before, although it was rare. So I was still immersed in my situation, trembling, shaking, the pain more severe, being pulled out of my body, the white light getting closer. And I'm still begging and pleading in my head with God. This is the third time and last time I heard the voice. God said to me, "Stephen, be quiet and listen to your wife." When I heard that, I had a calm come over me. I focused, I looked over to my right, and I actually listened to my wife. As soon as I listened to her and tuned into her, she started speaking in an African language. And this is the part that both of us, like I said, are still dealing with and trying to comprehend. She starts speaking in an African language. I know my wife for 25 years. The only language we know is English. You know, she assured me she wasn't taking African speech lessons behind my back or anything like that. So I'm listening to her speaking in these fluent African languages. She's speaking and she's chanting. She shifts from one African language to another. I can still tell it's an African language, but it's different. So from a different continent, different country. Don't know exactly what they are. I couldn't name the countries, obviously. She's spoken 3 different African languages, and I'm sitting there like, when I hear this, I completely forgot about my situation. I completely forgot about it. I'm in awe. I'm like, "Oh my God, how is this possible? This doesn't make sense. It's unbelievable. There's no way." She speaks in 3 African languages, and then she speaks in an Indian language, and she starts chanting and speaking in Indian, some Indian language. Now, I can only assume that it was praying, I mean, I'm that much. I'm pretty, in lieu of the circumstances, I'm sure it was praying. I have no idea what she said or anything. As soon as she started speaking in these languages, that's when everything was lifted off of me. Everything was. I came back in my body. I was coherent. I was seeing the room. Everything came back to me once she started praying. It was interesting. Nothing, no pleas to God, Jesus, or anything during the event helped at all. It was only when she started that brought me out of it. So I got up and I was pacing the floor of the hotel. By this time, she had stopped speaking and she was sitting up with a dazed look in her face, her eyes wide open, glossed over, like she was asleep with her eyes open, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to bother. I didn't want to disturb her. I didn't know what was. I didn't know what was. I didn't know what to do. I'm pacing up the floor trying to process this. The interesting thing that came to me during this is that going back to the event on the hill, seeing the little white lights in the sky, it was revealed to me that they weren't UFOs, that they were angels, that those were our angels, as if they were. That's all I got from that. I didn't get why they were there or anything. My what I got from it, what came to me was they were near, they were getting in place, or they were showing themselves to us, maybe to prepare us for the event, or showing us that they were there to support us, or what. I don't know. But I was told those weren't UFOs, those were angels, our angels. And of course, the event happened shortly after that. My wife finally came to. At first, she didn't remember anything, but as time went on, it started coming back to her. She said, I vaguely remember speaking in those languages. I have no idea what I said. It didn't even feel like me. It felt like an outer body experience. I have no idea, you know, anything about that. So, this was this happened 2 months ago, so I'm still shaken over it, still trying to process it. But yeah, yeah, that was it. And needless to say, since then, I've made some changes based on that experience. Obviously, it's obviously woken me up and showed me some things that I need to be doing and stop my procrastination on. So yeah, it was quite an experience.
What was your spiritual life like prior to this event?
Well, prior to my spiritual awakening, I was your basic, I would call your basic Christian. Grew up with the Christian beliefs, Christian upbringing, Christian teachings, and whatnot. Um, so I was pretty typical in that regards. But I was just beginning my shift, or I was in the middle of a 2-year shift of shifting out of that into spirituality.
Can you tell us about your spiritual awakening?
Yeah, my spiritual awakening was pretty rough. I was hit. Most people go through a spiritual awakening when they're hit with a lot of traumatic circumstances and life situations that basically has you reevaluate and relook at everything that you've been taught, everything you've been told, and how you're living and everything. I was having difficulties with my wife. Her and I were on the verge of a divorce and a breakup, a lot of fighting, negativity, all the sorts of things that goes along with those sort of things that most people go through. My son was going through a lot of changes, a lot of difficulty. He was a problem. He was going through his things that we were trying to deal with. I had just lost my job recently. Um, I had invested in a couple of commercial properties in the Ohio area, in the suburbs of Cleveland. Um, they were going down the drain. They were losing money. Bad contractors, uh, people that were lying, deceptive, trying to take advantage. Everything cost at least twice as much as forecast. And I just like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Everything's falling apart, and that all those contributed to me breaking down and began my spiritual awakening.
Can you give us a little more details on what actually happened during your awakening?
Yes, it was for me. It began with the questions. What am I here for? What am I doing? You know, I'm questioning. I'm killing myself to obtain this certain amount of quote unquote success, or what we people deem as success, or what the world has programmed us to believe is success. And killing myself for the last 20 years buying residential homes in California, now transitioning to commercial property and chasing this money. And I realize it's never enough. Chasing this happiness, chasing this ideal of success. I mean, who am I doing it for? Am I doing it for myself, my wife, for people, for status, for acceptance? And God, I can't believe you put people on this earth 80, 70, 80, 90 years, however long you're blessed to live, to go on this pursuit of material things and then die and lose it all anyway. So I began to shift. My thinking began to shift. A big confusion, a depression. What am I doing? What am I supposed to be? If it's not this, then what is it? Very depressed. I would say borderline suicidal. I always had depression. I wanted to go home, but didn't know where home was. Just lack of caring for anything that had to do. I didn't check my mail for I don't know how long. I just didn't care. Um, at first I tried to drown myself back into my old way of life. It didn't work. It didn't resonate with me. I couldn't stomach it anymore. Began researching books by Dolores Cannon, Michael Wise, um, Brian Wise, Michael Newton. Started to self-educate. Um, Started to put the pieces together. Started to change my belief system on heaven, hell, the Christian beliefs. Realizing that you know religion teaches that you need a man or you need an institution to connect to God or your higher self. You don't. All that comes from within. So just realizing and changing, reprogramming myself out of those old ways of thinkings that didn't serve me. Funny thing about it, I even tried to go back to the church because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was going through. And it's funny, I went back to a church. They didn't understand what I was going through. They hadn't been through it. I went back into the same Christian teachings that didn't resonate with me, and that I didn't find any relief there or any answer there. So that's when I decided to become a spiritual coach, because there are a lot of people that are going through spiritual awakenings, the dark night of the soul, or maybe just feeling unfulfilled and lost and not getting connection through whatever religion or faith they follow. Because I find that religion gets you depend on man and institutions. Spirituality is about depending on yourself and realizing everything is from within.
How did you change after your NDE?
It didn't really change me any spiritually. I'm The fact that I went through the spiritual awakening and the dark night of the soul, that helped me to deal with it a lot better. The main thing it changed was I I got it helped me get rid of the self-doubt and the limited thinking, where the ego mind trying to keep you handcuffed and make you believe you're not good enough. Who am I to be a spiritual coach? Who am I to teach people? Who am I to help people? This is too hard. This is too much. All those limiting thoughts. And what I realized was, and what I was told was, as much as we study, no matter what certificates, degrees we get, which is all good, but what books we read, all that is great. Knowledge is great, and it's wonderful, but nothing beats experience. Experience is the best teacher. And how can I teach someone who's going or guide someone who's going through a spiritual awakening or dark night of the soul if you haven't been through it? So I realized that God was basically telling me, you have all you need. Stop the doubt, stop the procrastination, and do what you need to do.
Do you think you weren't following your purpose and that's why you had your heart attack?
Yes, it was a fact of God was disappointed with me because everything that I'd been through, the spiritual awakening for 2 years, the dark night of the soul, me getting my certificates and my teaching and the books I read that I was shown to, that I was led to by him, by the spirit, by the angels, by my spirit guides. I had been prepared for two years for this. And once it came time, like, okay, you've studied, you've got your certificates, you've done this. Now it's time to get your website. It's time to get it's time to put yourself out there. That's when I stopped. That's when I got scared of putting myself out there. And once I did that, I started to slip back into some old habits and some old ways, and was running from the calling. And that's what that NDE was about. Was, and it's funny when people go through NDEs, they talk about seeing the white light and feeling the love of God and everything. I had an incident like that during my spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul, where it was more of an outer body experience. It wasn't a near death experience where I felt that. But this NDE for me felt more like I kind of equated to a parent telling his child to go to the room, and the parent walks in, and the father walks in there with a belt. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, this is your spanking. You know, I love you, but right now it's not about love. You need some tough love. And the whole sense when I was going through this, everything that I felt during this was two things that it felt that resonated with me. I felt disappointment, and I felt a tad of anger from God. So it was a mixture of disappointment and anger. And it was he was basically saying, look, if you're not going to do this, then what? You don't need to be here anymore. That's the feeling I got from that. If you're going to waste my time, you've been called. You know this is what you're supposed to do, and if you're not going to live up to it, then you don't need. I feel like he was saying you don't need to be here anymore. That's what it felt like.
Do you feel confident that you were communicating with God, or is it possible you were communicating with your higher self?
It's funny you say that because I was asked that before, and I never thought about that. But as I replayed in my mind the thoughts, the feelings, what was said, there's a couple things that make me think that it was God, not my higher self. And here's the thing. One is the telepathy, the communication that my wife and I had. The ability to speak telepathically and hear her thoughts, and she was hearing my prayers, and I was hearing her to tell me to fight, fight, fight. All this through telepathy. That's one. Two was when I was told, Stephen, be quiet and listen to your wife. I almost felt like God wanted me to hear her speak in different languages to verify that this was happening. Like, I want you to know you're not imagining it. You're not lucid dreaming. It's not from anything else. There's no way that you that you could deny this, because I thought about it being my higher self. But one, I can't explain the telepathic communication, and I can't explain my wife speaking in those three different languages. Um, and also, she heard a voice also when she was asked, "And why should I leave you here?" So she had a communication also. So all those things make me think, okay, it wasn't just me. And the funny thing about it is we were apart for a week and a half because, as I mentioned, my wife was visiting her mother and some friends. This could have easily happened to me by myself. It's almost like he waited for her to get back so we can confirm each other's stories. Like, there's no doubt you're not dreaming or making this up. So those couple things make me think that it's a little more than my higher self. That's what has me believe that this was from God.
How did this experience change your wife?
That's a good question. She's become more serious about her spiritual walk. A lot of things that I've told her before, she's gotten confirmation on. It all started with me. When I first got into my spiritual walk and went through my spiritual awakening, it was hard to understand and deal with. And tell you the truth, I didn't even know if we could make it through it because I was on a way different level than her, and she wasn't there. So it's like, how do we mend this relationship? How do we navigate this? But this has taken her to a new level spiritually now that she's been open up to this and she's experienced this. And I thank God for that, because I don't know if, we weren't equally yoked. We weren't on the same level. And she believed what I said, my journey, but it didn't resonate with her. She couldn't really relate to it. Now she's able to relate to it a lot more.
You think you decided to do this spiritual work, rebirth?
That's definitely what I believe. At first I thought I was called to do it, but I do realize that, I'm a light worker, you know, a star seed. I do believe that this was something that I agreed to help raise the vibration, to help raise the light, to help people come into themselves, help navigate going through this. Because, going through spiritual awakenings, going through dark nights of the soul, there's no manual for this. There are not a lot of people. Well, there are more, thank goodness, that are waking up. But just to have that guidance, just to have someone to talk to have a mentor, to have someone to understand what you're going through, because there's a need for this, and for people that are genuine, that want to help. There's a lot of people out there that get into spirituality because it's cool or trendy, and, oh, this is a great way to make money, and they haven't experienced anything. And since I experienced it, it's really resonated with me. And I know deep in my soul that this was something that I signed up for before coming to Earth, before coming in this carnation.
Do you fear death?
No, I don't fear death. And it's funny because I asked myself, why was I begging so much and so hard? Was it because I feared death? And it really wasn't because I feared death. It was because, one, I didn't want to leave my wife and son because I knew what that would do to them. Well, I actually didn't think I was leaving my wife because I thought she was dying with me, but leave my son, my mother, my other family members. And two, I didn't want to go back knowing I hadn't completed the mission, that I had failed or felt like I had failed. I didn't want to have to face my spirit team, the spirit realm, God, my angels as a failure. Now, even though to them, no, I knew I wouldn't be judged and looked at it like that, but I just couldn't take leaving without completing what I need to complete.
As a spiritual coach, what do you think are the most important things that people need to work on?
I feel like there's two things that come to mind. One is the self-awareness. I think that a lot of people need to become more self-aware, and they need to own up to their low vibration feelings or emotions, whatever it may be. Because what I tell people is that, people can go meditate, they can go earth, they can do sound baths, they can do all those things to connect, which are great and are essential. But it's like a car. If you don't drain the old oil, the old oil is drained from a car before they put new oil in. A lot of people are trying to put new oil on top of old oil. And if you don't deal with those negative and low vibrational feelings, judgment, envy, jealousy, anger, and you try to sweep those under the rug, but then you try to connect spiritually, it's going to block or hinder your spiritual connection. You have to deal with those underlying issues, and you have to be self-aware enough to look at them and identify them and deal with them. One other thing is, I tell people what a lot of people are doing is they're depending on religion and man, and they put man and they put religious institutions on these pedestals, and they feel like they need these to connect. I have to go speak with this preacher or this pastor or go to this institution. These people don't have any more of a connection than we do. They don't. God hasn't given them any special powers or special connections that we don't have. We're all from God. We're all from source. We all have that ability. But once we start depending on them for that connection, we give away our power. And really, most of the time, they're not teaching connection to the higher self or to God. You go in there, you listen to some songs, you praise, you listen to a story from the teaching or the Bible, which is all. I'm not knocking that, but where's the connection? How are they teaching you to connect with your higher self, with God energy? They don't. So people need to realize that they have to stop giving up their power and putting these institutions on a pedestal and thinking that they need them to connect. You don't need them.
After this experience, did you ever go to like a clinic or something and verify that you had a heart attack?
You know what? I had a couple of family members ask me that, and I thought that, but then I was told that this is not a medical condition. It was a spiritual condition. It was a spiritual event, and that nothing is wrong with your heart. You don't need to get it checked out. The only thing you need to do is what you're supposed to be doing. That's what I was told. So I haven't felt any need to get my heart checked out. In the past, when I did get it checked out before this event, I never had anything. I've had EKGs before. I've never had anything wrong. Nothing wrong with my heart. I've been in perfect health. So I didn't feel the need to go get any medical attention or to have anything checked out.
If you had a friend that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, what type of advice would you give?
Well, first of all, I would tell them it's okay to grieve. You got to get that out. It's okay to grieve. You have a loved one. You have a history. You love them. It's natural. It's a part of the process. But that's why it's really important to get in contact with your higher self and God energy, because once you do that and you really are in touch, when you get the divine guidance and divine downloads, in your heart that they're going on to continue their path. They're going on to a new reincarnation. They're going on to first cleanse their soul, review their life, see what they accomplished, what they didn't accomplish, what they need to go back and learn, if they need to move on to a new lesson or they have to repeat the same lesson because they didn't get it. And you will see them again in the afterlife, because our higher soul is in the spirit realm. It's just a piece of our soul that comes down here to experience life and transmit those experiences back to God or source energy. And I think that if people get in contact with their identity, with their higher self, with their spirit realm, their spirit guides, it'll make it a lot easier to deal with those events when they come up, with the death of a loved one, because you'll have that reassurance. I think a lot of people try to tell themselves, oh, they're going to a better place and this and that, and they don't truly believe it. It's just talk that to make themselves feel better. But to truly believe it, you have to get in contact with yourself, with your higher self, and with your angels and spirit guides to get those divine downloads, to be reassured of it, not just be lip service.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Yes, sir.
What's the best way to reach you?
The best way would be to go to my website, which is Spiritual Alignment SL. So it's the Spiritual Alignment, and then my initials SL, SteveLaRussa.com, and they can reach me there. I have my email on there. I actually have my phone number on there, and I have a link to my Facebook and LinkedIn page also.
Do you have something that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Well, it's a continuous journey working on myself. And the biggest thing I want people to know is that, the power is within you, and whoever you choose to help you out, they should be opening up your mind to new ways of thinking, new ideals, helping you get in contact with your higher self and God energy. They shouldn't be forcing anything on you. And anything that doesn't resonate in your soul, get away from it. Anyone who tries to get you to believe a certain thing or force you to do something, that doesn't go along with your higher good. A spiritual coach's job is to enlighten people, support, give alternative theories, and basically help to teach you to get in contact with your higher self and God energy. And what I do is help people eliminate blockages that hinder or block spiritual connection, like the low vibrational feelings, low vibrational emotions. So I'm just preparing myself to help people. For me, it's not about money. I've never turned anybody down for money. And if somebody turns you down for money, then they don't care about your journey. They don't care about your path, and they're not truly there to help you. I've taken on clients that could only pay me half, or some that couldn't pay me at all. And if you're honest with me and you can't, that's fine. I'm never going to turn anybody down to help people, because I can't. That's my mission. It's not about money. It's about raising the vibration and helping people get through confusing and challenging times spiritually when they're in between.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Yes. To everybody out there that's confused, unfulfilled, depressed, they don't understand the meaning of it all, just realize that all those answers are within you. It's just a matter of getting in contact with yourself. Give yourself credit for having more power than you realize, more power than the institutions and that man have told you about. Don't rely on those. You don't need them. The power is within you. And don't worry. Our destination is all the same. To go back to be with God, to source energy. The path we take is different. Everybody's path is different, but everybody's destination is the same. So take heart. If you're going through that, actually look at it as a good thing, because that's the beginning of a transformation from false teachings to truth. Don't think of it as a negative. I went through it. It's a purging. So just be strong.
Steve, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.